Hello, and welcome back to the Casual Fanatic. Today we go into episode 3 of the Three Key Men. Today's team, Man City. As you can see behind me, I have my Aguero shirt from the most painful season in my life of watching football, and probably the greatest moment of all time in all of sports, to be honest. There's no moment that will ever be replicated like that. And then here I have my signed De Bruyne shirt, which is pretty cool. Even though it's from the shirt where Belgium probably performed the worst in terms of expectation to reality. But hey, who's complaining? Delving into Man City. This perfectly segues into my first part, which is most important player for Man City. It's obvious, Kevin De Bruyne. How can you go further than talking about Kevin De Bruyne? Kevin De Bruyne has already established himself as an all-time great. In terms of an advanced playmaker, there are very few players in the history of the game that have been able to emulate or even do what De Bruyne does. It's the combination of range of passing, his quickness of decision-making, the powerful running, the ability to use both feet seamlessly, his striking of the ball ability, his set-piece ability. There's nothing this man can't do. There's nothing that this man can create on a football pitch. You put any string of players together and he will create. This man averages 15 plus assists season in, season out. And a couple of those seasons he hasn't even been playing with a striker. Now with Haaland, you have double digits assists in the first half of the season. He could go on to break the Thierry Henry record, but we don't know. Let's see how City progress. It hasn't been the most confident, comfortable City side that we've seen over the last few years. There's a clear adjustment. The game is changing for them. The way they're trying to set up is changing. De Bruyne in himself's position is changing. And what's important is that Pep does not squander these last few years that he has with De Bruyne, because De Bruyne is not going to be around forever. De Bruyne is already 31. He's moving into the twilight of his career. Yes, his game does translate to an older style a little bit better than some strikers or wingers, but nevertheless, we can't underestimate how much time he has left. With De Bruyne now, Pep has to what he's trying to figure out is, how do I get him in the optimal position to provide balls for Haaland? How do I get him into the position to create those devastating balls? And look, he can do it from almost anywhere, but there are positions that are better than the others. That inside half space on the right is his bread and butter. De Bruyne's ability from there is unmatched. You don't even see other players attempt or try those balls that he is able to create there. And what he has to do is find a way to get De Bruyne in this position without harming the rest of the game, without harming the build-up, because they've been lacking that. Without having De Bruyne and Haaland as part of the build-up a lot of the times, it's hurting City. And especially without those wingers with the ability to stretch the pitch and run in behind and give another option, which we'll go into that with my recommended signing. But De Bruyne is the most important player for City, and it's maximizing De Bruyne, especially in this Champions League run and over the course of the Premier League season, while keeping him fit, while keeping him healthy, and him keeping Haaland in the game. Because he's the only thing that's going to keep Haaland in games, is him feeding on the service that De Bruyne is providing. So it's crucial that they get the most out of De Bruyne. Going into the most promising player, you have a lot of options to pick from for City. Most important player, you have a lot of options. Signings, you have a lot of options. Promising players, you have a lot of options. The easy thing would have been to go Haaland, Foden, both young guys, both with a bucket load of potential. Both of them are going to be in City's team for the next decade. Well, we don't know about Haaland, but you assume in and around for as many years as he provides value until maybe he moves to Real Madrid. But the Real Madrid move is inevitable for any world-class player. So I instead went for someone a little bit different, because I assume those guys are going to be in the squad. We already know what they provide. Foden, there is more still to question in terms of how they're going to suit him in and how they're going to fit him in long term, especially with Jack Grealish being there and probably being a better systematic fit with the new look City. But for me, it's Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis is young right back, 18-year-old, just broke out into City's main team, has only played a few games, so it is a very small profile and very small sample size that we're looking at right now for Rico Lewis. But what he's shown in these games has been amazing. And I think that City have a lot to address defensively. Not only do they have a lot to address going forward, but just the pure quality and talent will be able to get them through most games and probably still win the Premier League title. We'll see. This year is looking shakier and shakier. The huge game is going to be Arsenal United this weekend, and then the two Arsenal City games. But in terms of going back to Rico Lewis, in terms of why he's so important and why I think it's so important that they nurture him and play him right, is because you're seeing a player that fits the Guardiola system perfectly. He's been trained through the Guardiola system. He was a 12-year-old when Guardiola came, or 11-year-old even when Guardiola came. So he's been through that learning, that education that Guardiola's imposed throughout the culture in the club. And what he's doing is he's playing the similar kind of position that Walker takes up in terms of coming in as an inverted fullback. But he has, in my opinion, more technical ability and more technical potential, which could provide a lot of outlets for City and help them in that build-up, especially with them trying to move De Bruyne forward and Haaland not being a part of it. With that being said, having someone who's a technical player on the other side of Rodri, because Bernardo Silva's on one side, or Gundogan's on one side, and then having Rico Lewis as another option, it would allow them a lot more tactical flexibility in terms of the angles that he's able to create, in terms of the passes he's able to find, the way they're able to transition the ball, the little pockets of space that he's able to interlink with a right winger, with De Bruyne, with the central midfielders. But for me, the problem they have is addressing the fact that they won't have recovery pace, because I don't know yet Rico Lewis's pace, how fast he's going to be, but I can go on the assumption that he's not going to be as fast as Kyle Walker. And Kyle Walker, even at his old age, is still providing that recovery pace that is saving City a lot of time because they play such a high line. And because the centre-backs, they're not slow, they're not slouches, but they don't have that lightning blistering pace to recover against Marcus Rashford, to recover against Sterling, Salah, or whatever. And they got found out like that against Liverpool. Salah had long ball behind, and Cancelo doesn't have that ability, doesn't have the defensive prowess to read it and time it, and doesn't have the pace to make up for it. So they need to find that. For me, right now, it's if you transition Rico Lewis into the team over the next few years, by the time he's 22, Cancelo will be in the 30s, and you can kind of phase out Cancelo maybe, or make him convert him into a different type of position because he has the technical ability to do that. But what they need is someone in that defensive line to add the recovery pace to cover for the fact that Lewis will be pushing up into midfield, cover for the fact that centre-back doesn't have that pace. So it's how do they replace the Walker's pace? But I think in terms of Walker's output offensively, they could already have found a ready-made upgrade. And that is not a small statement, because Kyle Walker is arguably the greatest right-back of the Premier League era. He's been untouchable for a decade now. And that is something that's going to be huge for City moving forward, and especially for Guardiola. Going into number 3, the recommended signing. For City, you can recommend pretty much anyone in the world, and it would be an attainable, logical signing. But the question is, who do they go for? Who is what they need right now? Because they have a few little things that they need to address. Their squad depth, as good as it still is compared to the rest of the Premier League, it's not what it used to be. They don't have that plethora of options after options after options. There's a lot more youth coming in. There's a lot more gaps in the squad, let's say. Yes, they have Alvarez as a substitute striker. Yes, they have a Grealish coming off the bench. Yes, they have a Calvin Phillips in there. But where are the different options? Because for me, the number one thing City need to address now is, especially this season going forward, because we just talked about them defensively and how I think they can adjust and what they need. But going forward, they don't have another option in terms of who's running behind. It's Haaland, but Haaland is such an obvious running behind and it's very central. So it's much easier for two centre-backs to read it and adjust their games to play against it. Or if it's a 3-back, even easier. Furthermore, also, Haaland doesn't have this. It has blistering pace, but once he's already running, he doesn't have those quick bursts. They don't have a replacement for what Sterling was providing, what Leroy Sané was providing before, which is that blistering pace in behind, someone to give them another option, someone to be direct, someone for, hey, if De Bruyne is seeing Haaland drop short, where's his other outlet pass? Because right now you've seen him trying to play it over to Foden, trying to play it over to Cancelo, and it just slows down because they want to play, they're possession players. They want to play with the ball, they want to interlink inside, they want to take it on slower. And they don't have someone who's just going to be like, give me the ball, I'm going to run at a defender. play me in behind, I'm making those runs. It's an option. And for me, this player shouldn't probably be someone who's starting week in, week out, because against a lot of the small teams, they don't really need it. It's more in giving them an option in the bigger games, giving them an option when they're getting stuck. And for me, it's someone that Arsenal have actually been rumored to be linked with right now, which I think City should jump in there and take him instead. And I think he would fit much better as well. And I think he would provide much more value to City than he would Arsenal. And that player is Moussa Diaby. The Leverkusen right winger, 23 years old, has been emerging this season, plays the majority of his games on the right wing, which is the Mahrez's position right now. Mahrez, Bernardo Silva sometimes plays in there, depending on how Guardiola's trying to set them up. But I think he would give them that option behind. He has the ability to play as a second striker or on the left wing, and that's going to be important. But this season, pretty much all of his goal contributions, especially all of his goals, have come from the right wing. And I think having another natural left footer in the team, having someone who's going to be able to run it behind, someone that's going to give them a little bit of dynamism, some extra emphasis on an attack, I think he's going to be crucial going forward for City this season. And I think he's attainable in the January. I think it's someone they can get done right now, and I think they should. It's Arsenal. Clearly, there's a price tag there. Clearly, there's someone willing to listen to an offer. If not, these rumors would not be coming out the way they are. Maybe it's more of a summer signing, and maybe Guardiola doesn't want that option behind. Maybe he's not looking for that. But I think Diaby has the technical ability to link up as well. In terms of percentile, where he lies in terms of pass completion compared to wingers and midfielders, it's not the highest. He's sitting, I think, in the 70th percentiles. But in terms of his actual impact versus forwards, and that would really be the positions that he's occupying, he's ranking in the 94th percentile of passes attempted. And his pass completion is lower, but that's because of the way he's trying to make those passes, the way he's trying to be incisive. In terms of his non-penalty goals per game is in the 89th percentile in Europe against attacking midfielders and wingers. In terms of shot-creating actions, he doesn't rank the highest, but that's not what City are looking for. City have other players that can create. What he needs to be is someone that opens up space, someone that creates options for the others, someone that's going to be a nuisance for defenders, someone that's going to give the opposition something to think about. Because as we saw in their game against United, it looks much more simple when it's Mahrez and Foden. They know it's in front of them. You're playing in front of you. Everything is in front. It's much easier for a defender than having to constantly check your shoulder. And that's what someone like Diaby would be for them, and that's something that City should definitely look into investing in. This has been my 3 key men for Man City.